June or Dune. You know, whenever I say June, people think I'm talking about the month. Like, hey, I'm gonna go see June later. They're like, June? No, June, Sand June, Dune, June, whatever. June review. June. This is a new film from director Denis Villeneuve. He's made some great movies in the past, such as Prisoners, one of my favorites. He's just got a good resume going at the moment, and this is another one from him. Now, June is based obviously on a long series of books, of the same name. I'm not too sure how many books there are. I think there's at least 7, but yeah, it's this long running sort of book series, and there have been film adaptations in the past. I believe there was one where they tried to tell the whole story in one book, in one film, and then I believe there was a 2 or 3 part sort of mini series type thing a little while back. But now it's being brought to the screen again in 2 installments, and this is part 1. And this has an all-star cast, which is really what sort of drew me in, because I'd never heard of Dune before. I'd never known anything about it, but when I saw the trailer and I saw the actors in it, you just sort of go, wow, okay, this must be a pretty epic, thing that they're going for here. And I'm talking about stars like Timothy Chalamet, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson, Jason Momoa, Skarsgård, just countless big names. You're going to recognise so many people in there, Javier Bardem as well. Zendaya, I don't know how I forgot Zendaya. Zendaya's in this as well. Now, to talk about the plot of this movie, obviously without giving anything away, just to give you some groundwork here, it's set in the far future. Humanity is sort of branched out into the stars. They're exploring, they're living on other planets. And one wealthy family has been asked by the Emperor. Now, the Emperor is someone who's sort of in charge of all these different, families and planets. It seems like they're the ones sort of in control. They sort of assign people around. It's still a little bit fuzzy to me because obviously I don't know too much about it. But this one family called House Atreides, I'm not sure if I'm saying that out, Atreides, they've been asked to go to this planet Arrakis in order to mine a substance called spice. And spice is like one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable thing. I'm not really sure what the word to use is, but the most valuable thing in the galaxy, because it allows for interstellar space travel. It allows ships to move. It's like the fuel. It's very, very valuable, and there's lots of it on this planet Arrakis. So House Atreides have been asked to go there in order to mine it. As this is a great honor, Atreides does accept that, and they have to move to this new planet Arrakis, which is sandy, it's very hot, and there's threats that they know of and that they don't know of. It's a whole new thing for them compared to the planet where they had come from originally. At the head of this family is Oscar Isaac playing the Duke, and then you have his son Timothy Chalamet and his wife, who's played by Rebecca Ferguson. So you've got a very attractive family there. It's no wonder that those two, had a kid and it turned out to be Timothy Chalamet. And that's just sort of, a very brief look at the plot. There was actually a lot more to this plot than I realized, even just based on the trailer. It really explores this whole side of things to do with like prophecies, visions, dreams, like hidden meanings, this idea of a chosen one as well. It really explores that thoroughly. There's a lot more to it than just what you see in the trailer. And it's kind of more about that than it is about the confrontations and stuff that you do see in the trailer. It's kind of the main part. It's why confrontations happen. There's a whole lot more to it behind the scenes than you initially realize. But I won't say anything else more regarding the plot, because if you haven't seen this, you need to just go into it and just experience it at, just kind of blind in a sense. Obviously, I'd seen the trailers, but I hadn't researched it or seen much more. So going into it, I was like, wow, you learn a lot. Now let's talk about what's good about this movie. First things first, I think this is the best looking movie I've ever seen. The cinematography is outstanding. Every single shot, I would just look at it and be like, wow, that's a really good shot. That's a really clever shot. The camera angles, just the way they position the camera behind characters, in front of characters, in order to like get a setting in the background, or just all this stuff. The cinematography was just unbelievable. It's such a stunning looking movie, and not just in terms of like the visuals and the CG and the practical effects and the costumes and the locations. It is also just because of how well it was shot. And accompanying all this was an excellent soundtrack from Hans Zimmer, one of his best. Really, really excellent. I mean, he did the James Bond soundtrack in No Time to Die, which I thought was decent, but I'm not really sure it suited his style. You know, because he does have a certain style. I feel like, you know, James Bond maybe, you know, not perfect, whatever. But this really suited him. He made one hell of a soundtrack for this. And I found it really, just really strong, very impactful in certain scenes. Although there was the occasional moment, sort of the Tenet issue, where his music was at a certain, you know, level, and you would have a character talking, but because they were talking in a somewhat hushed tone, like they were talking themselves or they were whispering, it was like under their breath. You couldn't quite make out what they were saying, and it was another case of that was sometimes happening in important scenes. So it was like I wanted to hear what the character was saying, but I couldn't. You know, this is why I always have subtitles on. So, but that doesn't take away from how good the score is. I just think levels, just a little bit sometimes, they need to just revisit them and be like, okay, let's just quieten that down a tiny bit. Now, performances were great from everyone, and I'm not just saying that. Obviously, this is an all-star cast, so they're going to do it, and you think, oh yeah, they're all pretty good. But no, they were actually all outstanding, so dedicated. Timothy Chalamet, I don't know if I've ever actually watched anything with him in. I just know of him, of course. You see him around a lot. He was really good in this. I wasn't really sure what his acting was like because I hadn't really seen anything of him. I'd just seen his magnificent jawline time and time again. But he was really good in this, really good. He's the lead role pretty much, and he nailed the part. He really had that sort of sense of there was more to him than meets the eye. You know, whenever he spoke, you felt like there was something, you know, inside of him. You know, there was secrets, and he portrayed that really, really well. And the person who really stood out for me was Oscar Isaac as the Duke. So, you know, he's playing Chalamet's father in this. He was excellent. Really, really good. I mean, I don't think I've actually seen Oscar Isaac put in a bad performance. You know, he was one of the highlights of the sequel trilogy alongside Adam Driver, and it's no wonder that those two are the actors that are continuing to make movies frequently because they're both really, really good actors. And I think people probably saw that sequel trilogy and said, well, those are the two best people in there. So it's no wonder they're still making movies now. And yeah, he was fantastic, Oscar Isaac. He's always got that sense of class about him, and he brought that here. He oozed it as sort of a rich, powerful leader of this family. Now, the first like 60 to 90 minutes of this movie were exceptional. Just exceptional. Faultless. I could not fault it one bit. I was absolutely sucked in, and it just went on and on and on. I just kept thinking, this is phenomenal. This is great. I went into this movie with slightly high hopes, but I didn't know what to expect. But I was just sucked in, and I thought, this is just fucking great. So good. It was really well paced. The way the plot unraveled, the way they gave us information and set things up as well was really nice. Like with this, there's so much lore and there's so much to this world. You know, the world of Dune, that you just sort of worry about how they're going to give that information to you, but it was just really kind of subtly done, and you get an understanding very quick through conversations, and just the way they set things up in certain scenes, the way they, you know, teach you about this universe, and you know, you're able to get to grips with it, understand it, follow it, and not get completely lost. Like it is, you know, it's relatively easy enough to follow, but they're also not spoon feeding it to you. You know, there is little bits where you need to think a little bit and be like, oh, okay, and then you sort of get to grips with it, and you feel like you've earned it. You know, you feel like you've earned the understanding of the movie, which makes you enjoy it more. For me, the movie lost maybe a tiny bit of impact just after that 60 to 90 minute mark in like a little half an hour spell. And it's not exactly a flaw with the movie, it's maybe just like a personal preference thing for me. Obviously, as I've said, they split this movie into they split the whole story into two movies. Therefore, they did need to get quite a lot done in this first movie, and they're going to have to get quite a lot done in the second movie whenever they do that. So you reach this point at about 90 minutes, I think, where the things start getting pretty intense. You know, a lot happens in like a half an hour period, and for me, it felt just a little bit sudden in a sense. Like, even though you see it coming. You do see it coming. So maybe sudden isn't the right word, but just everything happens very fast. And I felt like maybe that could have happened over a slightly longer period of time. And it got me thinking that maybe this would have been better split into three parts, possibly, if they did a trilogy out of this. Because, I don't know. It's not a flaw, I wouldn't say. It's just personal preference, I think. I think I maybe would have preferred if this movie had been drawn out a little longer. Certain things have been drawn out a little longer, and then things happen at the end of this movie rather than like in the middle, and then you continue that on in a second movie and then a third movie. But I imagine the studio probably said we're going to do this in two movies, and I think Denis Villeneuve has done the absolute best he could with this first movie when he's splitting an incredibly long story into two movies, because we're talking about, I think it's at least 7 books, as I said, so we're talking about 7, maybe more books, split into, probably 5 hours of screen time, because this is a 2.5 hour movie, second one will probably be the same, so he's done a remarkable job, but it's just a little personal preference. Maybe a trilogy might have been better. You can draw things out a little longer, because a lot does happen at a certain point in this movie. But saying that, it did need to have excitement in this movie. I suppose it couldn't just be all set up. It couldn't be all leading up to something in another movie, because maybe that would have left you feeling a little bit hollow when you come out of the movie. So the way it was executed was incredibly exciting, and when the action did kick off, when the intense moment come, when everything's happening, you are completely sucked in. You're just like, whoa. You just might have, maybe you might feel the same, you might have a little thought in the back of your mind like, this is a bit sudden, but okay. It's still really well executed though. It wasn't rushed or anything like that. I think it just comes down to personal preference. I probably would have preferred a little slower with a trilogy, but two-parter, it's still damn good. This movie certainly sets it up very well for part 2. I hope that's not too long away. I hope this is a case of like how they do Lord of the Rings and, the Hobbit trilogy and stuff, where they've just sort of filmed it all at once. Like they filmed both parts because we already knew it was going to be a two-parter thing. Like it's not like they're waiting on critical and audience reviews before they make the second one. I don't think that's what they're doing. I doubt they're doing that. They're probably just gonna, do it straight away. I'm not too sure if they've already filmed that second one. I mean, it would make sense, I feel like, because you kind of got everybody out there, and wherever the hell they shot this, it looks incredible, like these desert landscapes. So yeah, it's just a case of how long we're gonna wait. Hopefully it's not too long. I wouldn't want anything more than 2 years, because I think you need to keep people sort of, interest retained and stuff, because right now I'm very invested in it. If you leave it for more than 2 years, you might have people be like, oh yeah, Dune, forgot about that, The only thing I maybe have a slight worry about is the outcome in the second movie. Will it really be as impactful as you hope? I mean, they've got something cool set up here. As I said, I don't want to go into the plot, I don't want to spoil anything, but, as you get to a certain point, you start to see where this is going, how this story is shaping up, what it's leading to ultimately. And I do wonder whether, when we get to this second movie and they get to the point where they're, leading up to the whole thing they've been setting up, whether it will really hit us as an audience member, whether it will really be impactful. I'm not too sure. I'm certainly invested in this, but I can't say it's the most intriguing and fascinating thing I've seen in terms of sci-fi plot. It does feel somewhat familiar in some aspects, so it's hard to get overly excited, in all honesty, but because of how well it's acted and how well it's executed, I think it's still going to, be very good, even if it is leading to a somewhat predictable outcome, possibly. But I don't know how the plot goes or how it ends, so, it's naive of me to say that, of course, because it could genuinely surprise me and do something that I do not expect with the plot. So, I'm going to go into it blind and just enjoy whatever it is they throw at us in a second movie. In my eyes, this movie did a remarkable job in 2.5 hours, telling the story that it did, not forcing exposition down our throats, and just telling loads of story in a 2.5 hour runtime. This, in a sense, feels like I watched 4 hours of movie, because so much happened. But it was actually just 2.5 hours, which is still long, of course, but it feels like there was so much squeezed in there, but it was just so well paced and managed that it just felt, it was just a beautiful movie to watch. As I said, the best looking movie I think I've ever seen. Just outstanding. Incredible performances, incredible soundtrack. and a really good way to get me interested in a new universe that I've never read about, never known about until I saw a trailer for it, a few months back. So I got to say, I'm all in, and I loved it. And where I have had concerns, I think it's just a personal preference. I really cannot hate on this movie because I don't really think it did anything wrong. And I got to say, you've got to watch Dune. Whether it's your sort of thing like sci-fi, whether you've been invested in the past or haven't been invested in the past, see this movie because it is really something special. It's the best movie we've had this year, and I think we'll be lucky if anything does better than this movie for me this year. As I say, one of the things that makes a movie special is when you're still thinking about it a day or two after you've seen it. That was the case. The day after I saw it, I was really just thinking about it. I was like, wow, that was one hell of a movie. So yeah, go and see it. Pop down to Cineworld as well because you'll get a poster. Dune poster. It's nice, right? It's nice. I think it's a nice poster. It's just on the table when you walk out. And I realise as well, when you turn the poster upside down, it still says June. That's upside down. It still says June in a sense, which is really cool. And then it says June this way as well when you got it upright. I don't know. It's a cool poster. I like posters. Can add it to the collection of posters. As you can see, I have many around me. But yeah, go see this movie. Dune for me gets a 9 out of 10. Okay? 9 out of 10. Very good. Very, very good. Man, maybe 9.5. I'm going to just go 9 for now. Okay? 9. 9, 9, 9. 9's quality though. 10 is just something that blows me away. 9. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you go and watch Dune because it's outstanding. And I will see all of you in the next one. Bye-bye.